So you make an offer to buy your dream business. You send your letter of intent to the seller. The seller likes the deal. They likes the deal that you're offering. They sign it. You sign it. You got to sign both ways. Now what? You move on to escrow. You're very excited about it, except one problem. After the lender, the SBA lender, looks at the deal, he goes, nope, we don't want any part of this deal. We don't like the deal. Now, what do you do now? You are in escrow and you need the loan to fund the deal. So in today's video, I'm going to go over the top 7 reasons why a lender would say no to a deal, and more importantly, what you can do about it beforehand so you don't get to this point and be surprised. Let's get to it. Everybody, welcome to my channel. I am your host, Leo Landaverde, business broker and commercial lender, helping you buy and scale a profitable business. If you are a small business owner looking to increase your wealth by buying a profitable business, or if you're a W-2 employee looking to get out of the rat race by purchasing a profitable business and go from employee to employer, you're in the right place. Please subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the bell and you'll be notified every Thursday when a new video comes out. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you the top 7 reasons, and we're gonna go in order of importance. So the last 3 are the most important ones. So I'm gonna build up to it. Please, I encourage you to stay through the length because each one of them has their own weight. The 3 last ones are the most important ones. So with that said, I'm gonna list them out and then we're gonna go into detail, okay? So number 1 is landlord being unreasonable and not wanting to transfer the lease to the new owner. You can have the whole deal put together and the landlord says no, you have no deal. Number 2 is buyer lacks the post-closing liquidity required by some lenders. Number 3, buyer does not have good enough net worth. Number 4, buyer too far away from business location. We'll get into that. Number 5, you don't have enough equity on the deal. I'll get into that. Number 6, there's not enough cash flow on the deal to satisfy the debt service coverage ratio, which is the top thing that the bank looks at. And last but not least, you lack the management skills and experience necessary to assume leadership of the business. So those are the 7. So let's get into a little more detail. Number 1 is the landlord being unreasonable and does not want to transfer the lease to the new owner. I have seen several deals in this year alone in which the landlord does not like the buyer. For whatever reason, the landlord does not want to transfer the lease unless the seller stays on. But the whole purpose is that the seller is moving away. They don't want the personal liability that comes from having a lease. And a lot of the leases nowadays are personally guaranteed. So the seller desperately wants out of that guarantee and they want to transfer the new lease to a new owner. And I've seen it that everything is fine. All the contingencies are removed except that the landlord is being difficult. So how do you mitigate against that? So you want to make sure that during the process of your looking into this deal, when you're exploring it, before you make an offer, you want to get some feel from either talking to the broker or the seller, or whoever your intermediary is, that the lease is not going to be a problem. Now, the lease is not going to be a problem if you actually want to buy. If the seller owns the building and you're going to buy it, then it's going to be a real estate transaction. So you're going to own the real estate and the corresponding business, 2 different loans, but they're sold together. So what I want you to know is be aware that the landlord plays a key role in this transition from the seller to the new owner. Number 2, it's buyer lacks the post-closing liquidity required by some lenders. Now, so let's say you have $100,000 and that's all the money you have to buy a business, and you reason that, okay, well, I have $100,000 and I am going to be able to buy it divided by 0.1 or 10% of $1 million purchase, or 3 to 4 times cash flow, whatever that works out to, that you're very happy with, and etc. The problem is that you liquidate all of your savings, you have no equity in your home, your net worth is diluted, that you put all your money at play and you have no cash left after the transaction. So the lender sees and they look at your global debt service coverage ratio, they do their own analysis and their own calculations, and they realize that we're gonna have a problem. You don't have enough post-closing liquidity. That happens a lot to first-time buyers that don't have a business. If they have a successful business, well, the post-closing liquidity is resolved by the strength of the balance sheet of the buyer. But post-closing liquidity means, in banking lingo, that you have to have the ability to draw cash funds into the new business if you need to. Like that could be a personal line of credit, that could be a home equity line of credit, it would be cash in the bank, so you can liquidate some stock, whatever it is that comes from your net worth. Just in case you need it, you may not need it at all, but it makes some lenders feel a stronger case, especially as a new buyer, if you have some post-closing liquidity. Now, there are situations in which the post-closing liquidity comes from somebody else. Say you don't have as much liquidity, but you do have the down payment. You can bring in a partner, somebody who loans 20% or less of the actual new entity, either the new vehicle that is going to buy, say as an LLC or an escrow that is going to actually hold the assets of the new company. You can actually give ownership to somebody, and if it is less than 20%, they don't have to personally guarantee the SBA loan, and they, assuming that they have the net worth and post-closing liquidity, that'll satisfy the lender. So you need to know that if you're going to buy a business, there's no such thing as having no money and be able to get $1 million business and you put zero money on yourself. It doesn't really work that way. And those who actually talk about it, I don't know how they do it, but that doesn't seem genuine as a practicing licensed business broker. I don't see it happening. All right. So number 3 is that the buyer does not have good enough net worth. Now the post liquidity from number 2 and the good enough net worth are closely related. So a good enough net worth is, I want every buyer that I work with to be able to fill out and have a good sense of their net worth by completing a personal financial statement. I believe that is Form SBA 413. The reason why the SBA lenders like it to be filled out, you can have the information somewhere else, but they like it, so you're actually basically verifying it. You are speaking that this is a true statement of your net worth, and you're not lying under oath, and that they actually have the ability to pull your credit when the time comes. If they decided to move forward on the deal, they pre-qualify the deal. But if you're looking at your net worth and your net worth is 0 or close to 0, well, the reality is that even though the SBA as a whole is silent on net worth because they are the buyer, they are the financier of lease resort, really the lenders actually have the ability to set their own criteria that could be more stringent than the criteria from the SBA. So I noticed that there are lenders that they want at least $200,000 in net worth. Some want as much as possible. But there is a positive correlation between the size of the business that you're buying and your net worth. I had a situation in which I had an individual who used to own a home but sold it, went through a difficult transition in his life, had to sell the house, had $500,000 in the bank, so technically speaking, could buy up to a $5 million business, which the SBA lends up to a $5 million loan. The problem is that he couldn't because by tying the $500,000 going back to, the post-closing liquidity, he couldn't really do it because he would have been using all his cash. And you have no fallback position, you have no equity in your home, you have no lines of credit. So the net worth became an issue. So there are forms, there are calculations that I would help you if I was working with you to figure out what is the optimal price range. Actually, I did a video last week talking about what is the ideal price range based on your personal situation. If you haven't watched that video, it will be up here. The link will be out. I encourage you to watch it because I don't want to spend too much time on it, but you need to have your ideal price range, which kind of makes it easier for the lender to say yes. Remember, it's how do you avoid having the lender not have a problem with the loan that you're trying to finance. So that's that. So we talked about that. Number 4 is buyer too far away from business location. Now, is there a magic number that you should be within? Should you be within 100 miles of the business that you're trying to purchase? There's not a fast rule. There's not a hard set in stone kind of that you have to be within X amount of miles on the business that you're purchasing. However, everything is about a circumstantial case, a circumstantial evidence to lower risk profile from the lender, to lower your risk profile on the eyes of the lender. They want you to be within close proximity. Maybe you are within a couple hundred miles away. Maybe you are one short flight away. If the lender perceives that you don't have Stuck and trying to figure out how to buy a business, how to put all these pieces together. If you've been watching my videos, there is a lot of moving parts to buying a business. I am here to help you. Do you need my help? Let's get on a phone call and chat. Quick 15-minute calls can solve a lot of your issues. All you have to do is reach out to me. You can either drop me a comment below and I'll respond within 24 hours, or you can send me an email. My email address is in the description section of this video. Let's connect. Thank you so much. This infrastructure, if the business is not big enough that you don't have people who can actually run the business day to day for you, that may be a problem. So again, if you're looking at a business that is way too small, that you're basically is relying on seller discretionary earnings, that you're gonna be the main guy, well, in a sense, what you're actually doing is buying yourself a job. Is that what you really wanna do? Now, I'm not saying that you should do that, but there are circumstances if you can come into a situation that you can lacks the management experience and you can actually create the management, and so you can scale, so you can go from working 40 hours a week to working 20 hours. It's possible. All I'm saying is that the business location has become an issue as of late. Number 5, you don't have enough equity on the deal. Now, as a rule of thumb, you should have 10% down, ready to be deployed, sitting on some checking account that is ready to be injected as your equity injection, which is no less than 10%. No less than 10%. And the only time that is less than 10% and possibly even zero, yes, you heard that right. It's only if you have a very strong balance sheet. If you are a business owner, and I have many clients who have business owners with strong balance sheets that are looking to buy other businesses, well, that down payment issue is moot. And yes, that is the only time that I've seen that the lender says, it's just solid AR, solid working capital, very little AP, good numbers, positive cash flow on the P&L, strong balance sheet, great debt service coverage ratio. The buyer just looks awesome. Other than that, you're gonna need 10%. Now, everybody starts somewhere. If you're starting a first deal, you don't wanna buy more than you can chew. You wanna be ready to have 10% ready to go, and you wanna have, what I usually tell people is there's three types of cash flow the three types of figures that we have to worry about. One is the initial 10% cash injection. The other one is the working capital, that if I am representing the buyer, I want the seller to give us the working capital or give us a runway for 60 to 90 days post-closing. And the other one is your post-closing cash liquidity, your post-closing liquidity. So those are the three moving numbers that if they satisfy the lender. Now, if you knew that before you actually made an offer, then the lender would not be surprised. You're not being surprised, but the lender wouldn't have had an issue with it. So it's basically, this is like an open book test, right? You have to know what they're gonna ask, and you have to know what the lender is gonna be looking at, and then you have to be able to really to answer that, and you have to have that concern satisfied. All right, so number 6 and number 7, the two most important ones. There's not enough cash flow on the deal to satisfy the debt service coverage ratio to the satisfaction of the lender. Now, I talk about that to exhaustion. Actually, if you look at in YouTube some of the videos, I started like 3 years ago talking about debt service coverage ratio, because prior to becoming a business broker, I was a commercial lender and commercial loan broker. I was doing a lot of SBA loans that had nothing to do with buying or selling businesses, just people who actually own businesses who needed some working capital. I was heavily involved in PPP loans, EIDL loans, SBA 7A loans, 504 loans, etc. So I have a very good working knowledge of how this thing works. And the debt service coverage ratio has to be at least 1.25. Some lenders, some of the top 10 lenders, the preferred lenders, some of the highest lenders by volume, actually have raised the debt service coverage ratio from 1.25 to 1.3 to 1.5. And that makes sense, because the higher the debt service coverage ratio is, the lower the risk. So here are the reasons why you have a debt service coverage ratio problem. The number one reason is if the seller wants more than 3, given the rates that we have today, with prime being a 7 or 7.25 in the spread, it's not uncommon to see APR of 10 to 11%. Now, what goes up must come down. Eventually, 3 years ago, the SBA loans were at 2.75. So They will eventually come down. But in today's environment, you really is cash flow is everything. But I tell people, do not worry so much about the debt service, the rate, as it is the cash flow on the deal that you're buying. So if you're buying a deal, if you're buying a business that is probably no more than 3 times cash flow, I assure you that the debt service coverage ratio is not going to be a problem. If you're buying a business for $300,000 worth of annual cash flow and you're buying it for 3 times cash flow, and that puts us at $1 million, you have $100,000 down, and you have some post-closing liquidity, and you're actually purchasing a $300,000 in cash flow per year cash flow stream, and then you put in, your 10%, you have a loan of 90% LTV at around $900,000 plus the guarantee fees. So forgive me if I'm going too fast. I do other videos when I actually break this down. And then you have anywhere from $140,000 to $160,000 a year. You have minus the $300,000. You should have $140,000 give and take, or post debt service coverage ratio cash flow, which is the whole reason why I have my business cash flow calculator. That's the deal analyzer. That's the heart of it, is to satisfy your debt service coverage ratio. And I love this stuff. So there are 4 categories within number 6. The seller. So here are the issues that you need to be prepared to never make an offer that is more than enough. That you should actually know the debt service coverage ratio long before you make the offer, because it has to make sense to you before you give it to the lender. Seller wants too much money for the deal, so the deal is not priced to sell. The broker representing the seller has not done a good job making this deal palatable for the buyer, which means that the seller has not put themselves in the mindset of the buyer who's going to buy the business. Bottom line is, can the business afford itself? There's a huge variance between the internal financials and the tax returns, and you cannot reconcile the differences. It's amazing to me how many sellers have very sloppy books. They don't really look at their books. You have to you can't make heads or tails of the internally generated in the tax returns. There's nobody outside. There's no outside firm that is reconciling the books. So the banks get nervous and he goes, I don't really like this deal, right? Because the seller can say, I make all this money. This is great, but the tax returns don't reflect it. That's a red flag. You can have a situation in which ever decreasing margins of the business or ever decreasing revenue. So post-COVID, the business has not built up, but they want premium money, which is not reflected in reality. It's not cemented in reality. Or you may have an issue. I actually was talking to a lender about a month ago about somebody who wanted a FedEx route. You see them, they are all over, they're for sale, $700,000 a year in cash flow, sold for 2 times cash flow, 1.5 times. And it just on paper, it makes sense, except that I'm hearing from lenders that the FedEx route and some of these types of businesses, courier businesses, if FedEx changes the rules, you're out of business. It's too much concentration, and they're becoming first payment defaults. There's a lot of defaults now around those. I wouldn't suggest to any of my buyers deal with those, because this is intel that we're getting from the SBA lenders and the annual reports. Okay, last but not least, you lack the management skills and experience to assume the leadership of the business. Now, this is becoming big. What does the lender want? Let's go with the ideal situation. The ideal situation is you've been in an industry for 20 years, you run the business, you were second to the owner, say you were in a trade, plumbing, HVAC, electrical contractor, construction, you manage a hotel or a senior living facility, assisted living facility, manufacturing, you go on logistics, transportation, medical devices, etc. You were in that industry for 20 years, you have great FICO, you have good management experience, you have the net worth, you have the down payment, post-closing liquidity, and you have the management skill, and you want to buy a business in that industry, it's a no-brainer. You will know the nuances on the industry. You should be able to spot things, and you can actually take a business and take it from where it is today to 20% year-over-year growth over the next 5 years. You get to pay down loan much quicker. It's no risk to the lender. But what I'm seeing is people trying to get into businesses that they don't understand. It reminds me of what Warren Buffett says, that one time an interviewer asked him, hey, what is the secret to your success in investing in stocks? And he said, well, I really don't invest in things I don't understand. Okay, there you have it. So if you don't understand the industry you're getting into, why would you get involved in that industry? Because the likelihood of you failing, it's going to be very easy. Now, if you don't understand that industry, very well, you're gonna believe anything that the seller is saying, and you're gonna take it as truth when it may not be. So there you have it. Those are the 7. And thank you so much for watching my videos. Stay tuned. There's great videos coming up in the next few weeks. Limited time, I'm giving away my cash flow calculator. This tool has been downloaded now hundreds of times by many people. What allows you to do is look at a deal before funding and after funding and see how much cash flow is left. The reason why you're actually buying a business is for cash flow. No cash flow, no deal, there's no sense. So this calculator in Excel, this workbook allows you to do that, and it cuts your research time in half. Please download it. It is my gift to you for watching my videos. All you have to do is click on the link below. It's yours to keep.